Good morning and welcome to the Blytheweigh Mining Show on Core London TV. I'm Bonnie Hughes, a mining specialist, and today I am joined by Caledonia Mining. I'm joined by Mark Learmonth, the CFO, and also Steve Curtis, the CEO. They just put out their results today, and there's been lots of political changes going on in Zimbabwe that have been very beneficial for the company. Thank you so much for joining us today, and well, very good results, record production.
Yeah, record production, Q3 and Q4. Record production for the year. First half, we had some problems, which we addressed in the middle of the year, and it's really good to see that those remedial measures came through and had a very strong end to the year. So it's very good, yeah.
And you're still on schedule for your shaft sinking to increase your production to 80,000 ounces?
Yeah, Bonnie. We announced at the end of last year that we're actually going to deepen the shaft past the original target of 1,080 meters. We're going to go down another 2 levels. So that is actually going to extend the finishing of the shaft marginally, but it doesn't affect the overall target of 80,000 ounces by 2021. So yep, that whole project is well on track.
And I guess that just gives you access to more replacement ounces that you mine out by going deeper down.
Well, it creates 4 operating levels, and we did our projection of 80,000 ounces over 2 operating levels. So now we're going to have 4 operating levels. So in our mind, it de-risks the project. It does give us a lot more access, and we also put out a resource update towards the end of last year, which also indicated that there was a lot more gold going deeper and deeper. And that motivated the reason for us to decide to sink the shaft further. So there's another mine down there. It's very good.
That is very good. And so there's been a lot of political changes in Zimbabwe. And how is that going to be a benefit for you, for the company?
Well, fundamentally, there are probably 2 or 3 major issues. But the biggest thing for us as a gold miner is the government has announced the cancellation of the indigenization requirements, whereby we used to have 51% local ownership in our local operating company. That is no longer required. The law was repealed, or the amendments were signed into law last week, and gold miners don't need any local ownership in terms of the law. We would obviously always like to retain some local ownership. We've got 10% in the hands of our community, local community. We've got 10% in the hands of our staff trust, and we've got 2 other, a government body and a group of local investors. And we would like to take this opportunity to restructure, keeping in our local partners in terms of staff and community. But we'd like to sit down and have a conversation with the other partners and enter into some sort of a commercial deal to get Caledonia as a larger shareholder back into Blanket.
And I suppose since the change in political environment, there's been a lot more interest for foreign investment to go into Zimbabwe. So are you getting a lot more different interest in your stock now from other people who are now looking at investing in Zimbabwe?
I think that's fair, yeah. We are getting more investor interest, but the other thing that's happened as well is that if any people who have assets in Zimbabwe, their expectations as to a fair price of those assets have increased dramatically. But it has created a much more fluidity. But I think really what you need before you get significant movements of capital into Zimbabwe is the elections, which are scheduled to take place mid-year, and hopefully those go well. And I think if that happens, then you will see the mobilisation of much more mainstream cash to go into Zimbabwe, which is great.
That is great. And I also noticed that you're planning to do a rights issue. Yeah,
that's very small. That's very small. So as Steve mentioned, given the changes in legislation, we've said that we're open to negotiate the buyback of the government stake and the Framiro stake. And that requires a willing seller, willing buyer basis. But in the interim, what we can do is we're proposing to have a $4 million rights issue at the Blanket level, which Caledonia will underwrite. That $4 million will be used to accelerate work on some of the satellite properties, which again is one of the things that this new government is very anxious to see. They're very anxious to see more activity on the ground, more stuff happening. And having relaxed indigenisation, in our mind, there should be a very clear linkage between the beneficial move by the government to remove indigenisation and a positive reaction on our part, which takes advantage of those changes to put more money into the country to do more stuff and hopefully make things happen more quickly. So that's something that's happening. It will probably take a couple of months to play out, but that will probably see the 51-49% flip over the other way. Small, but deeply strategically significant for us.
And so with these satellite deposits, I suppose there are still early exploration has been done on them?
Yeah, there's been quite a lot of work done on them over the. I mean, Zimbabwe is an amazing place. There's all sorts of projects all over the place which were either operating up to 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago, and then since then, just basically nothing's happened on them. So that's very much the category that all of our properties are in. They have produced in the past. There are geological information available on them. It's just maybe not up to modern standards, but very, very, very prospective brownfield operations.
And I noticed you also had record profit for last year as well. That's very good. And I guess,
good, yeah. We like that, yeah.
And I guess things now are thankfully on track going forward for what all your plans for the company.
Yeah, what's nice, and I've got to say, I was saying earlier on, we couldn't have scripted this better. We've got our own operations, which are coming to a very good place as we planned. So this year just finished, 2017, we generated nearly $25 million worth of revenue, and a little bit more than last year. Last year we did 23. So you can quite clearly see at this production level, 50, 55 and upwards, we're generating 20, 25 and increasing amounts of cash. Which in the short term we're going to redeploy on the Central Shaft project, but that's only a couple of years now. After 18 months, 2 years, we'll have money which won't be going into Central Shaft, which we can use for other things. So that's all going nicely. And then at the same time, Zimbabwe seems to be taking steps to rehabilitate itself and make itself a more investment-friendly jurisdiction, which meets our sort of time horizons very neatly. So it's a really sort of the confluence of these two trends is very encouraging.
And so do you have plans to look at other sort of potential acquisitions, maybe in Zimbabwe or in other areas?
Well, Bonnie, we'll continue to focus on Zimbabwe and on gold. And as Mark said, there are many people who are holding assets in Zimbabwe. And we're being presented with many opportunities. The government is the custodian of a number of assets itself, and it's indicated that it's willing to enter into agreements to bring those back into production. And this will be the litmus test for Zimbabwe. Is capital willing to be invested? It's all in a good gold greenstone belt area that we would be looking in. But is capital willing to come back into Zimbabwe? They're saying the right things. We need a good, free and fair and open election, and I believe that it'll become a very investable destination. So we are looking. We're committed to Zimbabwe, and we like operating there. It's got a wonderful workforce, and we've got a good management team who understands it. So we're very excited.
I guess the government realizes that all of these potential projects were sitting dormant for so many years, and now they're now working on getting them back into and getting people to work as well. So it helps the government in many different areas, and it helps your company now that the country is a lot more sort of seems like a better place to be invested.
Well, if you just look at the fundamental change that the government took in reversing the indigenization law, that is the strongest message that they want to encourage investment. And there are certain sectors, platinum and diamonds, still require a 49-51 shareholding relationship. But if they can just encourage investors to come back in, and they can get investors back into the tourism sector, the mining sector, and the agricultural sector, I think Zimbabwe can turn itself around quite quickly. It knows what it has to do in terms of rectifying its loan defaults or deficits, and I think there are many people out there with money who are prepared to give them a go as long as they walk the talk. So we're very early into the stages of this new government structure. I believe it's going well. The election is going to be critically important, but we don't have to wait very long to see that come to fruition. So there's a lot of work for us to do. There's a lot of work for the government to do, but it's a very exciting place.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a great year for you. Thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to having you on the show again. Thank you, everyone, for joining Blytheweigh Morning Show on Core London TV.